So here's an interesting question. Y'all ready for an interesting question? Here's an interesting question. Why did Israel go into captivity? You ever thought about that? I mean, it's an incredible story about God delivering them out of the slavery. Okay? We understand why they went there. You know, there was food, there was grain, and Joseph was there, and everything was cool. But they descended into slavery. I mean, and by the time the rescue comes along, these people are in absolute slavery. Okay? So we have to really think about that and how did this descent into slavery happen? And we just saw that Israel is the chosen of Yahweh. He's the firstborn. Why was Israel ever allowed by God to go not only into slavery but even into Egypt in the first place? Okay? You ever wondered that? You know, we tend to focus on the miracles about coming out of Egypt, which is really cool. Why is he there to begin with? Okay? We tend to focus in our own lives about the miracles of God bringing us out of the world, right? And the things that he cleanses us of. It says in Genesis 26, there was a famine in the land, in addition to the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, to Gerar. And Yahweh appeared to him and said, don't go down to Egypt. So this is Isaac, Jacob or Israel's dad, who faces a famine. You know, his instinct is to go down to Egypt. And he makes it as far as Philistia to Gerar, which is like on the border there. That's the road going down through the Gaza area. He's kind of on his way, and he gets stopped there. The guy says, "Don't go, don't go." Why not? He tells him, he says, "Live in this land, live here. I'll be with you. I will bless you. I will give to you and your offspring all these lands, and I'll establish the oath which I made to Abraham your father." And so he's talking about all these lands. There was a lot of native tribes. There are native peoples. Okay, the Amorites in general, and the Canaanites, all the different, the 7 pagan nations that were there at that time. All these different lands. I'm going to give it to you. Stay here. Don't go to Egypt. So So that was basically the rule. Don't go there. So how do you end up in slavery? And what's interesting about slavery is unless there's a war, in war people lose the war and go into slavery. Okay, that happens. But unless there's a war, and there really wasn't a war in this situation, the descent into slavery is very slow. It's step by step, and it's what I would call a slow fade. So much so that you don't notice it. It's just little slices. You lose little slices of your freedom. You lose little slices of your liberty. And first thing you know, the block of cheese is used up. But I only took a little bit at a time. I let them have this, and I let them have this, and I let them have this, and all of a sudden, it's gone. That's how it happens. I want you to watch, and I think this is a story not only of the people of Israel in Egypt. I think it's the story of Yahweh's people in the last days. Okay? Genesis 41, okay? We've moved way forward here to the time of Joseph. The 7 years of famine had just begun, just as Joseph had said it would, and there was famine in all the lands. But in the land of Egypt, there was bread, there was grain, okay? Now Jacob, whose name had been changed to Israel, and it uses his flesh name there, Jacob, because he's thinking in the physical, I'm hungry. This physical man, Israel, saw that there's grain in Egypt, and Jacob says to his sons, "Why are you standing there just looking at each other?" It's like, parents ever felt like saying, "Why are you just standing there? It's time to do something, right?" He says, "I've heard that there's grain in Egypt. Go down there and get us some. That we're starving here. Go get some that we can live." Okay? And Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. Now, did they go to live there? No. They're just going to the market. They're going to this pagan land. Go into the pagan market. You go there sometime and you get stuff. You're careful what you get. But they just went there to buy grain. They didn't go there to live there. Okay? And so they come back, and you know the story. They come back and they tell their fathers, Joseph is still alive. And he's like ruler over the whole land of Egypt. And Jacob, I don't even believe you. And so they start explaining, and they tell him everything that Joseph said. They show him all the carriages and all the things that he had sent back. It's like, no, he sent all this stuff back for you. And Dad's looking outside. Well, I know I didn't give you enough money to buy that stuff, so either we're really in trouble with the Egyptians or you're telling the truth. And finally he believed him. He said, I got it. I believe you. It's enough. Joseph, my son, is alive. I will go see him before I die. Was his intention to go live there? No. I'll go visit. I'm going to go see him, okay, before I die, okay? So Israel traveled. Now this is very interesting. He travels with all that he has, and he comes to Beersheba, okay, which is southern Israel, on the border areas before you would go into the desert, right before you go into the desert, the Negev, and then the next thing is Egypt. So he gets there and he stops. He's still in the land promised to, offer sacrifices to his, the God of his father Isaac, like in the right land, I'm in the right place, offering to the right God. And then he has a vision, and he says, Jacob, in the vision, he says, Hanini, I'm here, talk to me. And he says, I am the God of your father. Okay, don't be afraid to go down to Egypt. So he's sacrificing, and with this comment, I would think he's like, Lord, I need to go to Egypt. I want to see Joseph, but I know the rule was you told my father to not go to Egypt. And he says, it's okay. Don't be afraid to go down there. I'm going to let you go down there, and I'm going to make you a great nation, and I'm going to go with you into Egypt, and I'm going to bring you out. So I'm going to let you go. I'm going to go with you. I'm going to bring you back out. But by the way, you're going to die there. And Joseph's going to close your eyes. You're going to be with your son when you die. And it's okay. And he's like, so okay. So he had permission. So we see a little shift here. He actually has permission to go, right? Okay. So what went wrong? Let's see if we can see. Joseph placed his father and his brothers, and he gave them possessions in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, and we know where that is. It's in Goshen. It's the Nile Delta, a beautiful flat place that stuff grows. You can see it from a satellite image, just like a green tree at the end of the Nile River. Joseph provided for his brothers and all of his father's household. He gives them food, just depending on the size of your family. He says, you got food, you got land. It's cool, okay? Work. What's work? You don't need work. I'm running the government. I'm giving you food, okay? I'm giving you a place to live. Don't worry about it. I got this, okay? It's a life of luxury. Kick back. I got this. I'm going to give you a place to live. I'm going to give you everything you need. I'm in charge for now. You see the descent? See, all that has to happen is we get completely dependent on something that we have no control over. In this case, the Egyptian government, or maybe a different government, maybe our own government. We get completely dependent on them, and it can change overnight. And there arose a president who knew not Joseph. Okay, you know what I'm saying? Because things change. That's the whole, the only thing that stays the same is that things change. And so when you get too comfortable, this is what it looks like. And so they weren't working. They were kicking back. They're not dependent on themselves. They're completely dependent on the Egyptian government here. They're completely dependent on Joseph and him being in charge. If you just stop and think about that, it's like, this could go sideways. Okay? But, so that's what happens. Work in the Bible has a lot to say about work, and when we're working, we're participating with Yahweh. 6 days you shall labor. That's not you can labor, you might. We're supposed to work, right? That's what happened from once we got out of the garden. It's like, you're going to work. You're going to work 6 days, okay? But the seventh one, you take that off. That's a Sabbath. That's a rest day for Yahweh, okay? And so we spend that day with Him. It's a date, quite honestly. It's a date, okay? Psalm 90 says, and let the beauty of Yahweh our Elohim be upon us and establish the work of our hands. Yes, establish the work of our hands. And that's what I meant by we work with Him, okay? So we do what we do as His laborers, but also as a reflection of Him. And so as we work with Him, we will be blessed, okay? If we're in harmony with God, the work that we do, we will stand back and say, I don't know how I even done that, right? It's talent on loan from God, right? And we see that. Okay? And so it said, do you see a man skilled at his work? He will serve kings and not obscure men. There's several translations of that. It's like, When we're skilled, when we're working with the Father, okay, and His skills are flowing through us and our mind is on Him, not on the chaos of the enemy, then our hands are blessed in what we do. How about this one? Proverbs 16. Idle hands are the devil's workshop and Facebook is his mouthpiece. Okay, that's the PJV. Okay, that's the PJ version. But it is interesting that I forget what TLB stands for. They actually do translate it that way and then give a caveat. They are close to that. I just put Facebook in there because that's the reality today. Idle hands are the devil's workshop. Idle lips are his mouthpiece, or idle fingers on the keyboard. Okay? And the literal translation there is a worthless man devises mischief. Okay? He's worthless, he's not doing anything. And his lips are scorching fire. You know, that's not a long ways from what I just put on the top line, is it? It really isn't. When you just move it from ancient times to modern times, it's not a stretch. Okay? 1 Timothy 5 says, besides that, they learn to be idlers, going about from house to house, not only idlers, but also gossips and busybodies, saying what they should not. Okay? They're on Facebook. That's what can I say? That's like the early Facebook. Timothy's Facebook. There it is. You have to walk to do it. Now you don't. You can sit at home and do it. Okay? So, okay, I'll quit picking on Facebook. It's Twitter. But, no, we get the idea there. We do get the idea that work actually keeps us focused. And the other thing it does, if we're focusing on our work and focusing on God and Him flowing through us and what we can do, then we'll be focused on our off time too. Okay? If we are sitting idle, it really is the enemy's workshop, because you see the people that do, I mean, especially young people. I see young people in the news that do horrific stuff. It's like, well, what does this 16-year-old do, 17-year-old do every day after school? Well, he really don't go to school. He's doing it online, and he sits at the house the rest. Okay? It's the same thing every week. I won't even bring up the one in the news this week. It's so horrific. And the strange thing about it was, after this kid, 16-year-old, kills his entire family, he went to school as if nothing had happened. Okay. All right, so look at this. Back to Egypt, back to Israel. It's Proverbs. This is very important. As a bird by wandering, as a swallow by flying, a curse without a cause shall not come. Okay? So if we see a curse going on in our life, we need to pray about what is the door and allow the Father to show us what the door that is allowing that curse, and there's other translators, shall not light, shall not whatever, it won't come. Okay? So this is fundamental to understanding how the enemy operates. When the enemy wanted to attack Job, he had to have permission. And in the teaching, we'll show you what the permission was. Job gave him an open barn door. And most people read the entire book of Job and miss it. It's right there. Most people read the entire book of Exodus and have no idea why Israel was in slavery. They just skip it. Have you ever heard, just honestly, have you ever heard anybody teach on why they were in slavery? No. There you go. And it's right there in the Bible. I was praying about it. I was like, you got to show me this, Lord. You got to show me this. And that's, if you want to know, ask. He says, you have not because you ask not. Ask for wisdom. I need wisdom, Lord, all the time. So what was the curse that caused Israel slavery? Here it is. It's in Ezekiel 20. Tell them, thus says Adonai Yahweh, in the day when I chose Israel and swore to the offspring of the house of Jacob, Israel's sons, and made myself known to them in the land of Egypt. That's actually this verse he's referring to as today's Torah portion. It's in Exodus 6 through 7. That's what he's referring to right there. He appeared and he said, I am Yahweh. I am the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he said, I made myself known and I swore to them, saying, I am Yahweh, your God. Okay? In that day I swore to them to bring them out of the land of Egypt into a land that I had searched out for them, a land flowing with milk and honey, which is the glory of all lands. Like, yeah, right. I mean, we know where we are. And then look at this. And I said to them, each of you throw away the abominations of your eyes. Don't defile yourselves with the idols of Egypt. I am Yahweh your God. Okay? But they rebelled against me. And they wouldn't listen to me. And they didn't throw away. Now listen. If you have to throw something away, that means you have something, right? To throw away. If God's telling them, you need to throw these idols away, what does that tell us? They're in idolatry. They have kicked back in Goshen and looked at the idols that the Egyptians are playing with and all the false gods that they're worshiping, and there was hundreds of them, but they had some major ones too. And they had embraced it. And that's what's the problem with living in a pagan society. Okay? If you got nothing else to do and you're just living in a pagan society, it is really easy to slowly just, well, that's interesting. And then, oh yeah, my dad said that was interesting, I should look at it. Oh yeah, my dad used to do it, so I do it too. You know, first thing you know, just 3 generations and whoo, they're completely into it because somebody didn't take a stand way back there. By the way, it's time to take a stand. And so he tells them, he says, they didn't throw away the abominations of their eyes, these idols that they were looking at. They also did not forsake the idols of Egypt. Okay, now he's talking about when he's going to bring them out. So this is how he found them. When he calls them and makes himself known, they're full-blown idolatry. Okay, which is one of the, you know, major, what we call deadly sins of the Torah. Don't mess with idols because it's a direct abomination. So what is an idol? You know, as something that they're praying to, literally. It's not just, you know, a teddy bear. It's literally an idol. The Egyptian had stone idols, okay? And by the way, there's like 12 or 13 different words for idols, and we teach that in another teaching. So it covers a bunch of stuff. Yes, you can worship a car if you want to, but that's not what this is talking about. This is literal stone idols that they are calling gods, okay? And of course, in Egypt, they had lots of gods. They had the Nile was one of the primary ones, and the sun. I almost called it by its Egyptian name, but I won't. They worshipped the sun. Okay, and they worshipped all sorts of things, and just like just lots of them. And they basically had one for everything: for thunder, for lightning, for clouds, for rain, and just for everything. And most of them involved fertility stuff too. So that all went along with it. And so he said that. Now, this is interesting. You want to see grace. So, they would not throw away their idols. They would not forsake the idols of Egypt. Then I said, I will pour out my wrath on them. Who? On Israel. To accomplish my anger against them. He's not mad at the Egyptians. This is what they do. He is mad at his son, Israel, for what they're doing. I will accomplish my anger against them right here in the middle of the land of Egypt. But he didn't. But, grace, I worked for my name's sake, that it would not be profaned among these Gentiles, among which they were among these people, in whose sight I made myself known to them. I went here and said, I'm your God, so now I can't turn around and I can't do this. See God's grace? It's really God's mercy. Grace is unmerited favor, right? Yes. Mercy is giving you time to get it right. Did he give time? In other words, this is what Israel deserved. He spoke it. You deserve this right second to be destroyed right here in the midst of these nations. But I'm going to call you out. I'm not going to do that. I calls in verse 10 to come out of the land of Egypt. I'm going to bring you out here. I'm going to bring you out of the paganism because you're just wrapped in it. And there I'm going to bring you to Sinai, and I'm going to give you how you're supposed to live. If you want to walk in blessings, I got to show you how to do it. Okay? I'm going to give you my statutes. I'm going to show you my ordinance, which if a man would just do this, he'll have life by them. It very poorly gets translated in a lot of translations and says he will live by them as if it's a bad thing. That's not what it means. In Hebrew it means it's the source of life. If you'll do this, you'll have life. It's the source of life. Not just physical life, spiritual life, emotional life, blessing life, everything. You know, that's the word. And of course, Yeshua confirms all. He said, if you love me, it's a relationship. We have a relationship. So he's bringing them out of Egypt to take them to Sinai to become in this relationship. So I'm not going to destroy you in the middle of your paganism. I'm going to call you out. So why did they go into slavery? Idolatry. Why did Yahweh bring them out of slavery? Mercy. His mercy. His grace. They actually were still in idolatry. Did you notice that? It's like they're still in it. He called them out and said, you're still. They didn't forsake it. He drags them out. And along the way, and what does he ask them to do? Just keep my commandments so you can have life. And what does Yeshua ask us to do? Keep my commandments so you can have life. Amen? Yes. So we follow him, we trust him, and we obey his commands. That's why we do it. Because we love him. Amen? Yes. Hallelujah.